Good evening, YouTubers. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's Tuesday, 8 p.m., our regularly scheduled live stream. As you're coming in, let me know how the audio and video is. I want to make sure that everything is working well before we start. Yesterday, I posted a poll of two questions. Both were really proposed by some of you guys. Let me just make sure here the stream is working. Yep. Let me show you the poll because the first one was really more of a question that was posed to me about what's happening on a lot of the social media sites, and they asked a question and then they attached to it a video that did kind of a legal analysis. I liked the question. I didn't necessarily agree with the legal analysis, so I said I'm going to turn that into a topic, and that's why I posted. The second topic was in fact asked directly by individual. I told him that's an interesting topic, and I will post it up. Let me see. Video and audio are fine. Perfect. By the way, guys, as always, this is a live stream, so it's all about interaction. You asking me a question, me responding. So I need you guys to ask question, but if you want me to read out your question, you want me to respond directly, make sure to put an @YouTuberLaw before your question, before your comment. That way on my end, it shows the whole thing in an orange box, tells me that I need to read it. If you don't put an @YouTuberLaw, I don't see it. I don't read it because usually there are so many comments. Then I cannot go through every comment, but I'm going to go through every single question that has an @YouTuberLaw. Obviously, if you do super chat, I will read it, but you don't have to pay anything. You just have to put an @YouTuberLaw. Let me put up the poll just before we start, just to see what we were talking about. The first one says PayPal bans everybody. Is there an antitrust problem? That's obviously the one that won by a vast majority. I thought it would be a closer run, but it didn't. The question was originally posted, can't, and then it was a listing, like 4, 5, 6 different social media company. Why can't we file lawsuits against all of them? And there was a legal analysis that dealt in Section 230, and the DMCA kind of confused the two and decided that because there was a release of liability, that somehow that amounted to a potential basis for a lawsuit, which it didn't. Nonetheless, the question was very, very good. So that's where this idea came from. Second question was about Verizon deletes Tumblr NSFW blogs because of weak Section 230 FOSTA SESTA. To me, that was a really interesting question because we see some of the impact of the bad law that was FOSTA and SESTA, which was a law titled, again, Stopping Sexual Trafficking, which sounds good, which is one of the reasons why politicians passed it. But in fact, it was just a way of creating a hole in Section 230, creating liability, and the deletion of all those blogs that many have spent years building by Verizon is a direct result of just a bad law that for the first time created a hole in Section 230. Nonetheless, obviously, we're going to go through the first one. Everything seems to be working well, everybody. Great. Maureen Peppelman, hey, YouTuberLaw, how you doing? Lying sick in bed, so I won't be participating. But good to hear from you. I'll let your smooth voice carry me off to dreamland. I never heard anybody saying my voice was smooth, but I appreciate the effort nonetheless. Hope you feel much better. Brian Skeen, what do you think about BSG copyright false DMCA claims? Fascinating topics. I think I'm going to do a video. I'm not sure if I'll do the video and release it on this channel or on my secondary channel, Legal Dissent. Kind of playing around with the idea of actually doing like quicker videos. That's not a very complicated topic, so I thought I'll discuss it then. But I've been thinking about it for a little bit. Just let me get my thoughts together about what's going on. I think I have kind of a solution to the problem there, but I just want to think it through, so I'm not going to talk about it in this video, but I'm hoping to release it over the next couple of days. Zarg, hi Leo, how you doing? Are you aware of Naomi Wu's situation? No, SJW seemed to keep going after her income watch. Okay, I don't know that particular one. this I won't be able to click on this stream. Do me a favor, if you want me to look, shoot me a link on Twitter. I'll be able to follow it, okay? Red Risotto, your Triskelion is messed up again. Can't focus until you fix it. Excellent. Alex Fry, going to your alma mater in the fall for med school. Any tips for the area? Have a blast. I know medical school is very difficult. You don't have a lot of time to spend, but it is absolutely one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been. I was blown away visiting. We're talking about Stanford. I was blown away the first time I visited. I had a roommate from college who went there for an engineering school, and I saw it and I loved it. By spending time there is just incredible. You have so many opportunities, especially if you have a car and you can drive a little bit around and see the ocean, see the seas, see people surfing there. Exercise amazing, being able to run up Big Bertha behind the school. I mean, you can spend miles and miles of running there. Just take advantage of the area. It's absolutely magnificent. Nate, oh, thank you so much for the super chat. A donation for your pro bono analysis. Thanks for addressing questions for free. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Cons Clansith, I see you considered my message. I don't remember which one of those was it. Was it the Verizon one? But both questions were outstanding. That's why I did. A lot of you are sending me stuff through Twitter. So I'm thinking about different ways of actually responding to them, because a lot of them require responses that cannot fit into a Twitter response necessarily. So that's part of my ideas. If any of you are subscribers, very few of you, to my secondary channel called Legal Dissent, I released a video, I think yesterday, a very quick response to a question people posed to me, and I think I'm going to try to do that too. It's kind of a less formal way of doing it. Hopefully it won't take me very long. These videos for this channel take a lot longer than I can handle if I want to do a lot more responses. So I'm thinking of using that medium. So even if this topic, even the Verizon one, is interesting to me, I probably will create a video on it and maybe release it on that channel as well. Nonetheless, I sent you videos on the subject. Outstanding. Like I said before, this is a live stream, so it's all about question. Put all your questions in. What I'm going to do is what we always do. I'm going to try to speak for about 10 minutes. I don't think today will be very long. I'm just going to propose. I think things have changed over the past week, which makes my outlook over some of the stuff we talked about in the past a little different, and brings up a potential solution based on what I've seen this past week. And I want to propose it, and it's an idea that in my mind will develop over the next few weeks as I get into more and more. But I wanted to propose an idea that's out there, so maybe we can run with it and create. There might be a solution in what I'm saying here, okay? So I'm going to start the stream in a second, and then I'm going to just jump in 10 minutes. I'll speak, but put in your question, because I'm going to go through and I'm going to read everybody that put an @YouTuber Law in front of their comment. I'm going to read those. If there's a comment or a question, I'm going to respond to it. Excellent. Over the past, I'd like to say 6 months, we've spoken about this topic of the deplatforming of individuals many times. Sometimes dealing with people that were much more extreme than other times. Many times dealing with people that I did not agree with on their opinion. I had no particular interest in what they were saying. I'm not particularly political person, so those topics in themselves, usually the kind of topics that make people that label people in the far right, far left, conservative, liberal, those topics generally don't interest me that much, because I'm not somebody who's that interested in politics. Nonetheless, we talked about it, and my response has been rather consistent. If you follow all of those videos, usually there were either discussions of why from a contractual standpoint this will not work, why often from an antitrust perspective it won't work, why there are certain elements that we need to prove when it comes to collusion or when it comes to monopoly that just didn't exist there. We talked about free speech. There were a number of different issues that we discussed and some of the defenses to it. And I consistently said to you guys that from a legal perspective, based on today's laws, I don't see a solution. I proposed even last time when we spoke about the banning by Patreon of Sargon, I proposed 4 or 5 different solutions. Those were legislative solutions. Things that you would have to go to your representative or your senator, asking them to push forward different ways of solving the same problem. Some were better than others. Some are, to me personally, more or less attractive, depending on what we're trying to change here. But something over the past few days, past week here, made everything different, made me rethink, showed me something that I just didn't see before. I know many of you said that you've seen collusion, you've seen concerted action by multiple players here, but when you look at it, at least when I was looking at a lot of those, I didn't see it. Now, there might be concerted action behind everything, but on the surface, it seems to me that there are a lot of what's called conscious parallelism or parallel consciousness. I'm not sure what's the correct term here. The idea being that competitors often follow one another, which is nothing particularly problematic with it. You know, one competitor drops prices, all the other ones tend to follow because they basically want to be able to compete. And there's a lot of different. One builds a certain kind of features, everybody else follows. So conscious parallelism is absolutely appropriate, happens all the time. And the fact that you can point to 2 companies doing what is otherwise the same kind of action, let's say banning people of a certain political belief or a certain political persuasion, or at least people to the right or to the left of a particular accepted point of view, that in itself doesn't show you any concerted effort that otherwise would be considered illegal, let's say under antitrust law. Something changed here, and as a result, I'd like to propose a potential solution that exists today that up until now I didn't think about, because I didn't see it, because there's something new here today. So the number of steps that happened over the past week, all of you are knowledgeable. First of all, Sargon of Akkad was banned off of Patreon. Everybody was upset. People that obviously supported his position were upset, but it was, at least to me, very surprising how many people picked up the mantle of saying this is so anti-free speech that something has to be done. People from on the internet, from absolutely all spectrum, people that I follow, that I admire, that I listen to, that in many ways are not really political. They're expressing more social point of views, but they're not really political people, that supported the idea that this was somewhat different. Nonetheless, when I went through that, I told you that there is no current illegality in that particular action. But what happened here, because so many people took offense to what Patreon was doing, so many people thought that there is something highly wrong with this particular action, that a lot of people said we have to get off of Patreon. But not just get off of Patreon, that no, there is a solution. Let's move to Subscriber Star. Subscriber Star, up until that point, I never heard about. Small, upstart, not really known company that effectively is a competitor of Patreon. Now, we've seen one of those kind of competitors in the past, when a few months ago, I don't remember exactly how long ago, when we first saw the banning of Jeremy of Unsleeved Media off of Patreon, a lot of people started to move to Maker Support. Maker Support collapsed spectacularly. You can argue, some people argue that it was because PayPal and Stripe pulled their support. To me, it seems that the company was run badly. I think the two things may have been, one may have pushed forward another, but it was a badly run company. People that, for instance, gave me money through Maker Support, the money never made it to me. Everything was seized, locked up. The money never actually made its way here. Nonetheless, that company collapsed very, very quickly. But now when this happened, a lot more people reacted, and there was a movement to support or at least establish a foothold using this new platform called Subscriber Star. And almost immediately, PayPal responded. First it was PayPal, now it was Stripe too, pulling their payment capability, their credit card processing and caching ability from Subscriber Star, which effectively put the entire venture on hold, froze their ability to process any payments until they find another payment processor. I'm not sure if they will or will not. I've read some of their posting. We'll see what happens there. Now, why is that different here? What made this particular action by PayPal different? We've seen PayPal pull support for Gab. That did not make any difference, at least in my mind. Why? Because if PayPal acts in a way that's anti-competitive, right, against a company such as Gab, Gab is not a competitor to PayPal. PayPal is permitted to express its ideals. You might disagree with it, but it's called freedom of speech. They're entitled, just like you, to express, and they're expressing their ideals through their actions. That in itself is not considered anti-competitive because there is no competitive connection between Gab and PayPal. That, in many ways, that's also the argument for why Patreon's banning of Sargon of Akkad in itself is not a violation of, let's say, antitrust laws, because the two are not really competitive. You cannot argue that somehow Patreon gains anything by banning Sargon of Akkad. If anything else, they lose something. So it's not necessarily a commercial action. They're not trying to benefit themselves commercially through their action. This is different, because what I see here is a company taking action that we've seen being taken by other companies, including PayPal, pushed by the Credit Card Association, Visa, MasterCard, enforced by PayPal and Stripe and other credit card companies. So when I saw Patreon ban Sargon of Akkad, okay, it's conscious parallelism, okay? It could be unrelated companies, unrelated decision by multiple companies to do the same thing. Maybe cultural similarities, depending on where they're located, how they interact with each other. But then almost immediately, we saw an action by PayPal against Subscriber Star. Now, Subscriber Star, unlike, let's say, Gab, did not have even a short history of, let's say, being associated with problematic or troublesome or left or right of what let's say some people would consider an acceptable behavior and acceptable speech. It's a brand new company, for all practical purposes, did nothing wrong except be a competitor to Patreon, who suddenly got a lot of free publicity because they became the only real alternative to Patreon. What I saw is PayPal, a credit card processing, react to something that was going to affect Patreon from a competitive perspective. And that changed everything. Why is that? Because as a credit card processor, PayPal is by far the dominant player in the market, right? Worldwide, I think they have somewhere along the line of 63% of the credit card processing, which in itself is incredible. I mean, that's an enormous amount of market success, market power, and I don't begrudge them their success at all. In the United States, you're looking at around 73%. The next competitor is Stripe, right? Worldwide, about 20%. In the United States, I think it's lower. They kind of even out to each other. You're looking at around 13, 14, 15%. Then you're looking at a much smaller competitor like Square, maybe up to 3%, and everybody else is, in the 1% and less here. So you're looking at PayPal alone controlling between 63 to 73% of the entire market, depending how you structure the market, and together with Stripe, above 85% of the market, upwards of 85, 86, 87% of the entire market. And there are certain restrictions you take on when you become the dominant, potentially the monopoly in the market. Now, neither one is a true monopoly, obviously. But monopolies are not only defined as the only player in town, they're also defined as somebody that has market power. So somebody above 50% can have enormous amount of market power and thus be considered a monopoly for antitrust purposes. But what this brings up, because of certain restrictions that are imposed on you when you have market power, that means that sometimes you are not permitted to behave in an anti-competitive manner. Now, we spoke about it before from a monopoly perspective, and I told you why it's difficult to get to PayPal as a monopoly, because it often acts against companies that are not directly competitors of theirs. But this is different here. Now you see PayPal, for some reason, acting in a way that tries to stifle competition from another company in the market that's acting in the same way it's acting, which lends itself to a potential cause under antitrust law called group boycotting. Now, this is not boycotting as a group of people, let's boycott some company. That's not at all. Under antitrust, group boycotting is when a group that has market power acts as a way of actually excluding market players in an anti-competitive way. A monopoly can act the same way, which will be called, I believe, refusal to deal, right? A monopoly basically that holds certain critical assets that does not allow other companies to then use it. For instance, it was in fact a very famous case of monopolies in railroad that didn't allow competing railroads to then actually use their railroads to actually get into a specific location, a specific city. Because it had such enormous market power, it was obligated under the law or face antitrust problem if it refused access to its competitor. That's not the case here. But we do have what's called group boycott, which is the concept that multiple companies acting together, possessing market power, can then actually exclude players in the market in a way that benefits them commercially. And that might include exclusion of direct competitors, could be people above or below them in the chain of production, and could be customers as well, which is what makes this different. I want to just go through some of the concepts of group boycott to just explain to you something here. And when we look at group boycott under antitrust, what first thing we look, is there an agreement here? Now, that this is always the argument. Are we looking at conscious parallelism, which is multiple companies doing the same thing, but with no real coordination among them? They're just all following the leader. Somebody starts and they're all following the leader. Or is this concerted action? Meaning they have some sort of an agreement, whether or not it's wink wink or an actual written or a verbal agreement, to act in a certain way. Now, that's an important element. A lot of times, unless you get some sort of whistleblower, you're not really getting anybody to tell you, there was a meeting, there was an agreement here. I'm just checking to make sure that there's no problems here with the live stream. I apologize here. So we're looking here for an agreement here. Now, usually to get there, unless we get some sort of a whistleblower, we need to go through discovery phase. But a lot of these lawsuits, once they start, can get past discovery, because the only thing that the plaintiffs can show is that we can see a lot of parallel actions between players, which might be suspicious, but is not really proof that there was actually an agreement. And a lot of courts dismiss without allowing the plaintiff to go into discovery to actually uncover whether or not there was an actual agreement. That's based on an argument of how court should be interpreting a decision that was made at the Supreme Court level, of whether or not there was a decision made at the Supreme Court level that said that just seeing parallel action by multiple companies is not sufficient. You have to give some proof of a concerted action, or it's going to get thrown out of court. The problem is that that was a decision based on a summary judgment, which is a different criteria than in a motion to dismiss. But a lot of the district court level, which is the lower courts at the federal level, have been dismissing antitrust cases based on what is otherwise standard set at the summary judgment level. That's kind of an inside baseball thing. Nonetheless, it's often been difficult to get past the motion to dismiss because you don't have the evidence, and while you want to actually go through the discovery process to uncover the evidence, a lot of courts have not let plaintiff get that. So that's the first hurdle, that there needs to be a coordination, some sort of an agreement among different players. The second one has to be that it's commercial. Like I told you before, companies have freedom of speech just like you and me. Many people find it hard to understand. How can a company, Apple, Google, Facebook, how can they have freedom of speech that somehow is exactly as a single individual? But in fact, it is. It's just been the history in the United States. It's a process that took nearly 200 years to develop. But companies do in fact have freedom of speech rights. As a result, a lot of courts have been cautious or careful in saying that even though they have a right to speak, nonetheless, we can hold them liable under antitrust when their coordinated speech is somehow anti-competitive. And courts have had to weigh this whole issue. And basically what they're looking to is whether or not they can, the basic reason, the main reason why these companies act in concert is for commercial purposes versus speech purposes. You can often find those two together. The question of which one is the dominant purpose here. Now, there's no doubt that the first defense a company such as PayPal, Patreon, or anybody else will say, well, if sued for antitrust, is for them to say that this is our right. We are allowed to express ourselves by actually removing people off of our platform, which is correct. There is a component here that's undeniable, that they have a right to express themselves, even by denying you the right to speak on their platform, and that's perfectly legal. But what happened here, when you saw this concerted action, when you see Patreon banning Sargon of Akkad, as a result of which you see a huge move toward a competitor of Patreon, not only move of actual creators who have moved there, but much more important, a lot of focus being placed on this competitor that at that level did threaten Patreon. And you see then actions by the credit card processors going against those platform actions that were not necessitated by any real adverse action that somehow impacted them. They cannot say that this particular platform acted in a way that violated some sort of credit card processing rules set by them, or Visa, MasterCard. To me, there is a lot of evidence that this was a coordinated effort. Whether or not the actions against Subscriber Star was coordinated with Patreon, or more likely the idea that removing certain people off of platform has been coordinated, has been instructed, has been requested by the credit card processors, and everybody follows suit. And this is an attempt by the credit card processors to actually support companies that have followed their call to ban certain people by actually supporting them in the marketplace. I think there's enough of a suspicion here that this was a commercial purpose and not really an expressive purpose, that this was not done to express PayPal or Stripe's interest in what they want to do and how they want to interact with users, but rather more about protecting the interests of one of its clients, in this case Patreon. You get past that, you have to talk about the next element is the market power. The question is whether or not as a group they have market power. Like I said, as a group they do. Patreon alone does not have real market power when it comes to processing. It's basically a social media company with a particular focus on a specific feature that's available elsewhere, and it dominates that very small subsection of the market. But when the law looks at companies to see whether or not they dominate, they don't look at tiny little market. Yes, it's the dominant player in the creator support payment system. It's really more of just a platform that allows for payment, in which it's a tiny little player. But once you put them together in a group with PayPal, suddenly they have enormous amount of market power. Suddenly, this is about processing payments, enabling people to actually to process. To repeat a third time here, this is about market power in the processing of payments. There is no doubt that if you are a small business owner, you need to work with PayPal or Stripe. They are the dominant player. Using them generate a certain level of trust with the customer, something that you don't generally see if there's just, pay by credit card. People trust this dominant player because they see it just about everywhere. Obviously, if I go on Amazon, I don't have to worry about PayPal. I can use Amazon Pay. If I work with Apple, I can use their system. But I work with any other kind of small business, there is a great deal of pressure to have PayPal or at least Stripe on your system. Take those away, and it puts that particular business owner at a great disadvantage relative to others, because it doesn't have a payment processor that people instinctively trust because they associate with other bigger player like eBay, or they've just seen for so many years in so many different locations. So there's an instant trust here. Suddenly there is enormous amount of market power where before there isn't. Now, why do I lay out this particular proposal? The idea that there might be a group boycott violation of antitrust, where before I was looking at it, I couldn't see it. Not because I'm trying to say that people should start filing lawsuits. This is a very difficult lawsuit to have. Not least of which is you still have to get past a motion to dismiss. You still have to be able to prove concerted effort in order to survive at least a summary judgment, maybe even a motion to dismiss, which makes it very, very difficult to move forward and may disable you from being actually go through discovery and uncover the whatever agreement there might be. I think that the challenges to a lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit, is great. What I think there is, and something that can be done tomorrow, I think that there's ample evidence here that would justify FTC action. The FTC, also the Justice Department, but the FTC predominantly does take on large antitrust investigations, and they have enormous amount of impact. They make decisions, often for political reason. They make decisions to start antitrust investigation, and the fact that they're investigating those companies makes an impact in and of itself. You don't have to wait for there to have been a resolution. Not only is an oversight by a government agency over everything you're doing going to keep you from doing things that might be questionable, even if they're absolutely legal, but then it puts enormous amount of pressure for you to constantly monitor what you're doing, so you make sure that not only you but every one of your employees are in line with legally acceptable standards here. And we've seen the impact that the FTC can have when it starts an antitrust investigations on companies such as Microsoft, talked about many times before. Microsoft was investigated and actually determined to have been a violation of antitrust in basically not allowing competitors. Basically, they had a monopoly over an operating system, and they used that to keep certain competitors, including Netscape, who was a popular browser of the time, off of Windows. But what happened, more important than anything else, is that they were under immense investigation, not only through the US, through the FTC, but also through European authorities, that it prevented them from doing a lot of action. There was actually a release of information by mistake to the FTC that got released to the public, which showed that Microsoft contemplated killing Google early on. Microsoft, if it wanted to, could have prevented Google from actually working on its browser, but he was so afraid of the FCC that he's actually stopped. He was afraid to follow that, and as a result, we have Google, which we would not have had otherwise. And we see that over and over. FTC takes on huge cases. And when the government takes on cases, it's not restrained by budget or time. It can take on a multi-year investigation and complete it. And in the process, by investigating, they make an impact on the market. Their oversight actually impacts whoever is being investigated. You have to understand the kind of power and money that the federal agency has. And I think that what happened over this past week changes the entire equation, at least in my mind. I think that there is sufficient evidence here of group boycotting by credit card processors and some companies involved that are using those same credit card processors, which is obviously an enormous amount. Probably every single company in the social media platform, in the content creation market, that there is concerted effort shown not only through parallel actions, but now by PayPal and Stripe taking actions that are otherwise not justified by any sort of competitive or expressive ideas, but rather seems to be in line with trying to protect Patreon, who was suffering a result of its actions and the subsequent attention given to SubscriberStar. I think that the solution that can be implemented today, beyond asking Congress to do anything, beyond trying to get some long-term solution here, is to talk to your representative, to senators, to impact the administrations, to give instruction to the Justice Department, or better yet, to the FTC, to start an investigation when it comes to the payment processors and whether or not there is group boycotting by the payment processors here. That's what I wanted to tell you. Let's go to the live stream. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. Prospero, thank you so much for the super chat. Interesting factoid: the head of Patreon trust and safety team worked for PayPal. She has apparently deleted her LinkedIn account after Nick Monroe showed this connection. Wow, I didn't know that. That is interesting. I think it's moving beyond merely suspicious. I'm not somebody that's prone to conspiracies here. So I'm not somebody that's going to jump from there's just parallel behavior. This seemed to go beyond just saying companies are acting in parallel here. There seemed to have been... Patreon seemed to have had no reason to do what they did to begin with. At least their justification was bad. If they wanted to ban Sargon because they didn't want him, they have a perfectly legal basis to do so. But the reason they said they did seemed to be completely without merit. But then the credit card processor following through to actually hit a competitor who's benefiting from Patreon's actions, that changes everything. Let me go start now. Again, everybody, make sure that you want to comment a question, anything, just put @YouTuberLaw before your comment. That way I see an orange box and I can actually read it. If you don't put it in, I'm not going to read it. Cal Noran Silan Talk. Even if PayPal is in violation of antitrust law, what would the ramification be? Massive fines, like in the billions of dollars of fines, and prohibition against such actions in the future. That's ultimately what you're looking for. I mean, fines are great, but ultimately what you're looking for is an outright prohibition. More than that, you start an investigation. Federal Trade Commission, Justice Department starts investigation based on this, because I think that there's enough evidence to at least merit it. I'm not telling you that they violated antitrust. None of us can know that, right? Because nobody knows what actually happened. Was there actually concerted action and behavior there? Were there any sort of agreement? But I think there's justified enough to start an investigation. That's going to put everybody on notice. If the FTC starts an investigation of PayPal, trust me, every single platform will pay attention and may think twice about what they're doing, because suddenly the government, with enormous amount of resources, paying attention to whether or not you're abusing your own market position. And some of those platforms are in fact massively popular now. A company like YouTube is not a monopoly. Why? Because once you start comparing it to Facebook, to Twitter, suddenly its position, at least in social media, is not as large. Again, we're not going to look at how they control video. That's not the market we're looking for. We're looking at a far greater market in which it's one of the major player. But can there be concerted effort among them? Possibly. And if that's the case, a government investigation of what's happening in PayPal may put the kibosh on it, may actually make them think twice before starting to talk over lunch about, how should we deal with this or that? There's a great deal of usefulness in an investigation. Drifting Skies. I watched your previous video about YouTube Content ID system, and I have to ask, what should I do about false positive of Content ID get falsely ID'd as having copyrighted music? What should you do personally? If it's Content ID, you basically just responding to it. It's a terrible system where there is no end. They say yes, you say no, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. You just react to it. If it's copyrighted music and you're certain that either you have a license to it, or it was in the public domain, or there's permissible reasons why you used it, I would just respond back and forth. You really have no option, because YouTube have set up this terrible system because that's what the music industry wanted. And it's not based on the law, so it's not something that you have a legal ramification for, like you have with the DMCA when there's copyright infringement and they file DMCAs against you. So there's really nothing you can do here except go back and forth and respond and hopefully be the last one standing there. John, could PayPal still get away with what they're doing if they were held by the same legal standard as a bank? Well, it's not a question of legal standard as a bank. There is a specific law dealing with financial institutions that are related to house ownership and everything else when it comes to getting mortgages and being able to borrow money and stuff like that. So there are specific laws involved there. You could pass a law that say that, again, hold on a second. Any organization that provides credit are held to the same standard. To the extent PayPal provides credit to people, and it does provide it, so it's held to the same kind of non-discriminatory standards as the bank. The problem is that even when it comes to the standards we hold banks to, and to some extent PayPal, arguably, because they provide some credit at some level, there is no protection for point views. There is no protection against discrimination as to political affiliation or political association. So you're not protected when it comes from a bank, when it comes to those elements. So you don't need to hold PayPal to the bank standard here. That's not going to work. We talked about it last video that you can change the standard. You can try to go to your congressman or senator, tell them that you need to add those categories into I forgot the name of the act now, the Fair Credit Act. But that's a different solution. You're asking Congress to do something positive. What's the chance of them actually getting that done? We have a very ineffectual Congress. But this you can do tomorrow. You can send information to the FTC. Everybody can send information to the FTC. It can be done also on a state level. You can submit information, try to influence your state attorney general, maybe even the Better Business Bureau in your local county. They then submit that information to the FTC. There's a lot of way information makes its way up to the FTC. It's a political organization. It's a business organization. It kind of has to make decisions about what it takes on based on pressures it's facing, both political and business. So the more complaints it's received, the more likely it is to start an investigation. And you can also impact them through your congressman by having them and affect the administration, potentially then affect the FTC and the Justice Department's chance of undertaking it. I think it's simply an easier route, something that can be done very, very quickly, can be started very quickly. The investigation will take years, but the impact can be immediate once a government starts looking at it. It might put a slowdown to the extent to which there is any sort of collaboration or concerted action by different players. If there is, and I don't really have knowledge of that, this would actually slow it down or stop it altogether. Brian A. Is there a masterpiece cake shop style public accommodation suit that Sargon et al. Could make? The answer is no. Okay, so first of all, this was an issue of a gay couple going to a bakery shop in Colorado. Please, anybody correct me if I'm getting anything wrong here. Asking for a cake. The owner of the shop saying that he cannot produce a cake for a wedding for the couple. He said he can buy anything else, but he cannot, because of his religious belief, he cannot create a cake for the wedding. It was found to have been in violation at the lower court level of Colorado's own anti-discrimination. I forgot the actual law. I do apologize for discriminating based on sexual preferences, some sort of a civil rights action. When it made its way up, the Supreme Court did not decide to rule based on that, but rather said that the owner of the shop was mistreated in the analysis by the Civil Rights Commission of the state itself. I may get the name of the commission wrong. I'm sure I'm got the name of the commission wrong here. So the Supreme Court never ruled on this issue of whether or not religious belief can be the basis for otherwise violating civil rights all based on sexual preference. That was never decided. It was the Supreme Court never wanted to make that decision. So you cannot read it to be that way. So the answer is no, because there is no law, there is no civil rights violation when you discriminate against anybody's political association or political expression or affiliation with any sort of political party. So that violation doesn't exist. So you can't use that to try to win. Now, so that's why I spoke about in the prior videos about if this is something you believe in, that you want, you need, again, to go to Congress and try to add that as a potential. You have to determine that websites are public accommodation, which currently they're not, unlike certain retail shops, in this case, the bakery shop. So that will not work. You need to change that, and you need to add political affiliation and political expression as a protected class, which currently they're not. Thomas Hayden, thanks for your insight. Thank you so much. I appreciate the super chat. Let me just go find my spot here again. Sorry. A lot of great stuff, but I just have to find the spot where I stopped before. Okay, here. Me here. I would suggest that Section 230 remains with one amendment, that both parties waive 230 rights and protection if a contract is in play that both parties agree to. I'm not sure what that would get you. I think that I'm personally I believe that Section 230 should remain and should be inviolable. I think that it's important to the entire development of the internet, and I wouldn't play with it. I think that any attempt to making any holes in it, any exceptions, is a mistake. We are leaving it up to Congress to make a decision about how potentially the market can develop and whether or not it can sustain the removal of that shield. And I don't think that that's your problem here. I think that Section 230, we talked about it before, Section 230 is used as a way to get out of, as a part of a motion to dismiss. But even if you didn't have it, you would still lose the case. You might get past a motion to dismiss, but you would still lose the case, because Section 230 is really not the reason why you cannot sue. There's other reasons, such as free speech rights of the companies themselves, or other reasons. So I don't think Section 230 is a solution to anything here. And so I wouldn't personally suggest trying to find holes in it. Kim Zahn, should people who spread fake news be banned? My God, I mean, the difficulty with there should be some look. Any platform needs to have some rules. If somebody wants to start a platform that is a free for all for whatever it is, they're welcome to it. I do believe that some rules are needed, and because of the political pressure on it, these websites have to move against fake news. They don't want to. Facebook doesn't want to remove fake news, right? It doesn't want to ban people willing to pay them money to promote garbage news. It does it because Congress is telling them they have to. Should they? Probably. There should be some basis to determine what's good or bad, what is completely fake, but I think there's just better tools than that. I don't think you have to protect people from fake news. I think you have to give them more tools to combat it themselves. I think people should be in place to decide what's in front of them. The reason why fake news is so viral is because all the social media companies set up their stream to make sure that you stay on their side as long as possible. So the more you read something, the more they're going to show you. So if you read one instance of some fake news, they're going to make sure that you get more and more of it so you stay on their side. Rather than, it was one thing, I wasn't particularly interested, I don't know how I got into my stream, whatever, and I'm moving on to everything else that your aunt and your uncle and your friend from college that you haven't seen for 20 years is writing. The problem, well, there's a problem of fake news. The reason why they go viral, why they make an impact, is because it's the social media companies that are controlling the stream rather than giving us the ability to control exactly what's in front of us. And I think that if they decided to let go of the stream and actually give us tools to control exactly what we want to see and what we don't want to see, and stop pushing more things in front of us based on algorithm designed to keep us on their site, I think the problem will not be as big, and we will not be as concerned about fake news because it wouldn't be as viral. Me here. To be American is to capitalize and to contract, and Section 230 appears to remove a fundamental right to contract, as 230 can seem to circumvent that right. I don't disagree with you, and the courts are very, very careful when it comes to a right to contract, which has been one of the reasons why a lot of time you couldn't get antitrust violation, because the courts are very particular in protecting your right to contract. Again, I don't think Section 230 is it. The problem in this case that we're talking about is not Section 230, but rather because the right to contract may be, how would I put it? Courts are more willing to say that the right to contract does not negate any antitrust problem if you have certain kind of market power. So while the courts will enforce your right to contract for anything, to the extent to which you have a certain market power, you're expected to behave differently because your action may have anti-competitive effect on the market. If I said it correctly, if I'm making any sense here. I know you think that Section 230 gets a lot of these companies out of problem, but that's really is not, because the same things that they are writing in their contracts is that they can terminate you for any and all reasons. So even though they might say we'll terminate you because of things happen on the site, because they have the provision that said we can terminate you for any and all reason, they can still do so even if it's off site. And there lies your problem. Everybody pointed to the fact that he said this and it's written here that it's irrelevant. These contracts allow you to be terminated for any and all reason, with or without notice, at their whim, and that's valid. Now, there are ways you can increase the rights of people that are party to those contracts. We talked about it before. Maybe make certain provision considered unconscionable under state law, but I don't think, again, it's Section 230 here that is really at the heart of the problem here. I think that it is. I think that Section 230 is just a way to get to dismiss the case early, But these are not cases you would have won under the law, even absent Section 230. The meme of destruction. Is there a particular precedent for defining a monopoly, and is a potential solution clearly defining roles in online commerce? Sure, there's tons of precedents when it comes to defining monopolies. There is no single one. Sometimes it's a more of a natural monopoly, one that grows on its own and it's the only player in that industry. Sometimes it's the only player in the entire world, in the entire country. Sometimes geographically, depends on the market. They do enormous amount of analysis to determine what is or is not a monopoly. There is no singular way. Sometimes it's nothing to do with being the only one. Sometimes it's being even a smaller player that has enormous amount of market power. Some small companies that otherwise you wouldn't think twice about it may be obligated to behave in certain ways because they possess so much market power that they can impact the rest of the market, right? So a lot of times there could be in a small market a rather large, let's say, supplier that then impacts everybody else around. And if he refuses to deal with any particular retailer, he can have a real anti-competitive impact on the market. And the reason why you then say, well, he has the right to contract with anybody he knows, true, but because he holds such a dominant position in the supply market, in the supply function, he's nonetheless going to have an enormous impact. As a result, he should be prohibited from acting the way he did. So there is no definition, lots of precedent when it comes to monopolies, but the operative thing is that there is no single definition for it, because they do market analysis to figure out what is the market. Is it the world? Is it the country? Is it the city? Is it some sort of a geographical region? Is it based on the market? You know, it's a small market, but we take a specific kind of role within that market. It's very difficult. Can you make the argument that a company such as Patreon is a dominant player given its position in a much larger market? Yes, I don't think it's a very good argument, but nonetheless, I can see that argument being made that, well, it's not a monopoly, it has monopolistic power because it controls basically the flow of finance. It's the dominant controller of all finance between content producers and their fans. It's really not true, because obviously the platforms themselves send a lot more money through their AdSense, through advertisement, through super chat, through a lot of other things that they provide, not just YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. They have a lot of other ways of providing money. So you probably couldn't get to Patreon being a monopoly, but that's it. It's just an enormous investigation, because there is no consistent way to determine what is a monopoly. Lapcode 92, we have unrelated monopolies run by people with the same ideology, smacking down competitors not of themselves, but of their friend. It's oligarchical and technically legal. Well, the argument here that it's potentially not legal. To the extent to which they are all independently acting because they're of like mind, then it is legal. You're right. Companies are permitted. That's going to be considered unless they are by themselves a monopoly, right? PayPal by itself might be considered a monopoly. I think it would be considered. So to the extent to which it's acting against competitors for commercial purposes, it can be in violation of a rule in antitrust called the refusal to deal. But to the extent you got group of people, that's why it's kind of hard to do that, because PayPal is not acting against competitors. It's acting against its clients or its users, but not against its own competitors to its own competitive advantage. But to the extent to which you look in the group of people and there might be some concerted effort, mainly not parallel action, but rather some sort of an agreement to do so, then you might be able to get them under the whole group boycott option, which will make this illegal. That's kind of the proposal I'm making. Big Yehuda, Lila Tova, hope you're doing well. Thank you so much. Prospero058. Man, it's 8:51, and a lot of the comments have been deleted. Everything that all the comments over the last half an hour have been deleted from the stream, and I can't see them. That's interesting. Okay. Prospero058. No, that's we already read. No. Is tortious interference even in play? Probably not. Okay. Could there be? Yes. But it kind of depends on the jurisdiction. And in most cases not, because none of these platforms have to work with you. And to the extent to which, and you would have to prove that it wasn't really concerted, they both all agree, but rather that somebody spoke badly about that individual, and as a result, either there was a breach or there was a termination or something like that. And that's unlikely to be found. It's unlikely that, say, that Patreon has just been, bad-mouthing some content creators to Patreon, and Patreon is removing them. It's more likely that there is concerted effort to say, let's identify who should not be on our service and remove them. So you could find tortious interference. I think it's actually a much more difficult one here in this case. Jonathan Giglio, finally we may have pierced the veil. Look, I have to tell you, I was surprised. I mean, when I heard the quick move against Subscriberstar, I thought that was just a dumb move. Why would you move so quickly against a company? It kind of like, it makes you look guilty. It makes you look bad. It makes you look as if you're trying to defend Patreon, who is your client, essentially, who gives you money. And why would you try to protect them if there was no agreement for them to behave in a certain way? It makes the whole thing looked bad because of the move against Subscriberstar. I'm not sure why it happened, but I think that it raises enough question here to merit investigation. That's all I'm calling for. I'm not saying that PayPal did anything wrong. I think that this move gives enough evidence here, which moves this whole argument beyond, well, I just see a bunch of parallel action, to, well, a minute, this makes no sense. Because it seems that PayPal is moving against its own financial interest, against a company. This is not a move against the individual subscribers. If PayPal said, look, no matter what, we are not dealing with X, Y, and Z, Sargon, if we are not going to processing them, and any platform that processes them, we will not allow you to actually use our feature for that individual. That might be okay. But a move against the entire service based on the fact that people got kicked out of one platform, moved to it, and it now received so much attention, makes it look as if there is, to me, enough evidence to merit investigation by the FTC. And that's all I'm asking for. I'm calling for an investigation by the FTC. I think that everybody should be, if you are concerned about free speech, and let me say it again, if I actually cared enough to view any of the videos by any of these individuals, which I don't, because none of this interests me, I would guarantee you that I'll be opposed to 99.9% of everything any of them say. It's completely irrelevant to me. If you believe in free speech and the right to contract, I think that you should be calling up your senators, your representatives. You should put pressure on the administration to ask the FTC to start an investigation. Do nothing else. Start an investigation. Take a look at these series of actions to see whether or not there's something behind them. The government can do something that often we as private parties cannot. Yes, if you are damaged by this behavior, you can sue yourself. but the process is long. It's enormously expensive. You're most likely to get defeated at a motion to dismiss phase because you will not be able to come to the court with any evidence of actual concerted action, rather that more like parallel behavior. But the government can go beyond that, and I think this justifies it. Justin White, the head of Patreon Trust and Safety, used to work for PayPal. Yeah, you guys been telling me that. It's interesting. A bunch of numbers, I don't know what they are. Do you believe there is any legitimate reason to censor speech outside credible threats and slander? Me, no. Now, you have to. I have to acknowledge that the Supreme Court has already determined that these corporations have absolutely the same right of free speech as you. Not because they are a group of people speaking as one, but rather that as a corporation, a single entity, it possesses rights of free speech. So I have to accept that the corporation has a right to free speech. And as such, they can set their own rules about what should be said or not said on their platforms. I think that it's short-sighted. I'd like them I'd like there to be more advanced platforms. I'd like these same platforms to say, you know what? Let's leave it up to people to make those decisions. As a result, we'll give them the tool to exclude whoever they want. Because everybody has a right to speak, but I don't have to listen to any of you people. If I don't want to listen to you, I don't have to. So give me the tools to decide what I want to hear from. Don't give me streams where you decide by algorithm what is right for me and what not. I don't want to be shown things that you think will actually keep me on your side. Believe it or not, most of your suggestions are terrible anyway. Okay? I'm staying on your side despite the fact that you give me bad suggestions most of the time. But give me tools to make my own decisions. At that point, let everybody, short of, yes, if there's a court order to remove it because, let's say, some defamation case, absolutely remove it then. But short of that, short of violence or criminality on site or immediate calls for, what do you call it? I forgot the word now. That's great. Incitement, right? A call for violence, which is immediate. I think that these platforms should focus on allowing everybody to speak, but then empowering the individual as to what they want to listen to. I think you should not be afraid of speech, but you should be controlled what you have to hear. John, if PayPal, by banning, is expressing their values and is protected by the First Amendment, could they legally discriminate against protected classes as it be compelled speech otherwise? Okay, so it does have a right of free speech, and the courts then make a decision about whether or not they want to even mess with that because it's inviolable, right? They really don't want to mess with the right of free speech. That's why in cases of group boycott, they look at a determination as to the commerciality of the speech. Is this really an expression of their values, or are they making a commercial speech in order to benefit themselves, or in this case benefit their partners or other people down the chain that in one way or another then benefits them as well? That's a determination they make. Now, whether or not PayPal can use its right of free speech to then discriminate against a protected class, most likely not, because of the laws that are passed that actually define those protected classes. Now, PayPal, to the extent it's providing credit, is actually then controlled by the Fair Credit Act and cannot discriminate against people that are protected classes. But then again, none of the people we're talking about are in a protected class, right? So, but at that point, they would not be permitted to discriminate based on your race, your sex, your age, your nationality. But there is no protected class when it comes to political speech or association. That's really disturbing. My chats are getting deleted. I'm constantly here. I apologize. I just saw more of them getting deleted. So I'm losing a lot of the different chats at the top. So was something about Jack County. I don't know what they are. Kronos Chiron. So we all get post off. Sorry. So we all get a post office box, a wheelbarrow, and freak out the local banks and tell them what's up when we bring in a bundle of $100,000 more money order from as little as a few bucks to more. That might have an impact. Absolutely. Justin White. Remember to type at YouTuber Law. Yes, if you're directing your comments to Lior or he's going to gloss over them, absolutely. If you don't put an at YouTuber Law, I'm not reading your stuff. So just remember to put it. Jonathan Giglia. Could the fact that Sargon didn't actually violate Patreon policy help demonstrate collusion? Not in itself, because that's still Patreon by himself, so there's no collusion there. You have to connect it to somebody else for there to be a collusion, and that act in itself is not going to get you there. IENDI Knight. How hard and legal is it to investigate individuals from these companies? The leader of Patreon safety team work for PayPal. It's not a question of how difficult it is to investigate them. It's a question of, is anybody going to speak? Where will there be some sort of evidence of a concerted action? Normally probably happen on a very high level and then disseminated. Most people probably don't even know that there was a concerted behavior or some sort of an agreement. Most people probably believe that this was independently done. So unless somebody speaks, it's very, very difficult if there is any sort of trail, like email or text trail. Very difficult to find. Justin White. To add to Giglio's comment, Jack is on the record saying that TOS is unclear to suggest that the wording only applies to stuff on Patreon, but says what is there, TOS is not correct. I read it, and if you go enough deep into the little black hole there, because there's a read more, it is clear. It's terribly written. It's clear if you want to read way too much that they can go after you regardless of where the action is. They're not limited to what's on the platform, and they give a lot of examples how they go about it. So if you read the first level, it seems as if it's only about what happens on the platform. If you read the press releases, but if you keep clicking read more, you get down to the very bottom where it's pretty much says that they can take you out for associating with different people, things that have nothing to do with your platform. So they give a lot of examples how they can remove you for things happening completely off platform. Jonathan Giglio, we knew their ideology would slip them up eventually. Something happened here. It's disturbing to me. Y'all toilets be talking. Okay. Jack Conte even stated that these tech companies executives talk to each other on a regular basis. Whether that is in regard to the platform or not is not clear, but I suspect IMO. Yeah, I heard that as well. I mean, I saw the video of that. That's not evidence. It adds to it. I'd like to see an investigation where the government sends them a demand to see, all email correspondence, all communications between the companies. That's how it's going to get done. When they order them to provide all the information, and then they perhaps then seek some sort of a court protection to protect them against that request, then that's when you start getting into some real nitty-gritty stuff. Clan said, have we found an ashtray with PayPal and Patreon cigars ashes yet? We're smelling the smoke. We just don't know if that means that there was ash there. But that's the problem here. To me, there's more evidence than just saying it's parallel action, because this action makes no sense at all. To me, going after subscriber star makes zero sense at all. It's not in line with their stated policies of trying to prevent certain content from utilizing their service. This is going after a platform that has no history of that whatsoever, just because I think it's getting the attention that is threatening Patreon. At least to me, that's why it seems. That's why. All I'm asking for is an investigation. Mike Musk. So PayPal boycotted Subscriber Star. Can Subscriber Star sue both PayPal and Patreon? The answer is yes, but I think it's much more effective if you can get the FTC to start investigation. Yes, you can. If Subscriber Star hurt, but you have to imagine you're going after the single largest credit card processor in the entire world, controlling like 73% of the US market, 63% of the entire world. You have that kind of money, I mean, they can drag it on for years. And given the court's desire to get some of the stuff dismissed so early on, I think a much more effective way is to start a government investigation. And maybe then, through the freedom of information, be able to actually start a private lawsuit. But I would have the government do kind of the dirty work. I would have them start an investigation and see where that is going. Trans MJC. Well, what is different between antitrust and monopoly law? Because isn't there a big difference? I mean, PayPal could make an argument for monopoly. Antitrust is the bigger one. A monopoly is one subsection of antitrust. So there's a lot of things under antitrust. I would agree with you that PayPal probably would fall under the definition of a monopoly. At that point, it's not about concerted effort. It's about them acting. Like I said, there is this concept in antitrust called refusal to deal, where large monopolies refuse to deal with other companies, but it has to be the illegality of it is when it's anti-competitive. And PayPal not working with Subscriber Star in and of itself is not anti-competitive because the two are not competitors. So it's only once you start bringing in Patreon into the mix, then you realize that what it might is an agreement between PayPal and Patreon, and then PayPal then acting to protect its partner, its client, by going after Subscriber Star. But that's still all antitrust. It's just different area of antitrust. But that's what I'm telling you, that's called group boycott. INDI Night. The Google App Store removed Minds and Gab, two social network platform. It looks like any new platform with rising popularity get axed. That's a bigger issue, because obviously Google removing it, when it's removing social media apps, it is also a competitor of those social media apps. It doesn't seem to. Is Google threatened by those? No, I mean, I don't think Google is threatened by any of the small startups, because there's a far better ways to deal with startups. Facebook did it well. It bought Instagram. It's a far more effective way than shutting them down here. So while it's problematic when a monopoly, and Google is a monopoly because it controls the entire marketplace for Chrome apps. I mean, I know that there are some competitors, but it effectively is monopoly. And it has enormous market power here. You'd have to show that their action were commercial in nature, that they were trying to kill competition. And that's a difficult thing to prove in this case. At least I don't see evidence of it. But if you could, I mean, Gab is a competitor of Google. Whether Google is concerned about Gab is another thing altogether. Kronos Shiran. If someone at Patreon had Subscriber Star ended by PayPal, would that be tortious interference to that person interfering in your business? So that, I mean, again, tortious interference, it will be that Subscribe Star had a deal with PayPal, and if Patreon then asked PayPal to stop working with Subscribe Star, that could be tortious interference. Different states, different standards, so there's not a single way. But yes, if you could make that connection, you can go also for tortious interference. that's all requires, you know, massive lawsuits. And you would do if you are a subscriber, you would say, I'm suing for tortious interference, I'm using it for fraud, I would sue under different state anti pro competition, anti false advertisement laws, and I would also argue for antitrust laws under both state and federal laws. You would pile on the charges and hope that one of them succeed past a motion to dismiss here. A non-Mason. Don't corporations set up funds to pay FTC fines for their action? It is just a price tag for taking out a company or doing anything illegal in general. The fines are enormous. Like I said, when the FTC went after Microsoft, Microsoft changed its behavior. And that was much bigger. Obviously, Microsoft was threatened with being broken apart into a couple of different pieces because it abused its monopoly power. But in the end, it didn't really happen. But it prevented Microsoft from acting in certain non-competitive ways. So you're right. They might have money reserved for the fines. But a lot of times the fines, I mean, I represented a company that was completely destroyed by the FTC one time. I mean, the fine was enormous, more than the company was worth. And how big a fine would be for something like a PayPal, and will it be meaningful enough for them? I think if it was a large enough fine, and if the investigation took a long enough so they were in the headlights of the federal agency, I think that they would change behavior. I think that's the key. What you want at the end of the day, if there is, and I don't know, I'll keep repeating, I don't know if they did anything wrong here from a legal perspective. I just think that there's enough evidence to suggest that an investigation is warranted, and if it finds that there was something illegal happen, I think that through the investigation, that's what they will stop doing. And that's really what's important here, that they stop acting in a certain way. Quick strike. What if it's the actual banks and credit cards that are exerting pressure on these entities themselves? MasterCard did a similar thing. I think that's a bigger issue. I've talked about it before. If in fact this is not really, we're missing the point, this is not PayPal, this is Visa, MasterCard laying the ground rules of how they want everybody to behave, then they are definitely abusing their monopoly power in their ability to exclude people. And what is happening essentially is preventing them from being competitors to PayPal that can actually take up the slack. And so rather than thinking about PayPal actually protecting Patreon, it'll be Visa, MasterCard protecting PayPal from competitors by making sure that there are no other processors that can pick up the slack and do things that PayPal otherwise refuses to do. So it could be, but I think right now you have enough evidence to start investigation about PayPal Patreon. I'm not sure if you have enough to investigate Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and all the other credit card processors. Maybe the whole thing gets wrapped up into one, and all the information comes out, and this becomes a much larger investigation than originally anticipated. But right now, there's not enough to suggest. We see what they say, but we just haven't seen really evidence of concerted action. And Silva, I think PayPal has a monopoly on the email as payment concept. Also, I saw you use Homer Simpson in one of your thumbnails. How can you get away with that? It's because of fair use. I was using it to express a certain opinion that was beyond the picture itself. So my usage was fair use. It was transformative. I wasn't trying to advertise my usage of Homer Simpson in and of itself. It was not a picture I was trying to sell. It was being transformed to express a political, social, or legal idea, and that's why I was allowed. Brett Young, what is your second channel name? It's called Legal Dissent. I will just even LEGA Dissent, DISSENT. I will try to leave a link down below for it. if you guys have noticed by now, what I do is after the stream is over, I take down the stream, I post it to my secondary channel, and I post tomorrow. I will post a condensed version of this stream to this channel, and that's basically what the other channel was about. But over the years, I've produced probably 50, 60 different videos for different platforms, and I'm going to use a secondary channel to post a lot of those videos. So rather than having, videos specifically for Facebook or for Twitter or elsewhere, I'm going to produce a lot of the videos, post them through the secondary channel, and those are much more, I don't know, informal kind of videos. They're not really vlogs. I'm not talking about my life, but more vlog style expression, so that I'm just talking about it without a lot of the editing cuts that take enormous amount of time, which I'm reserving for this channel. Labco 92, protected classes, was a terrible solution to a problem. It literally sets unequal standards for different citizens. It has morphed. We should all be equal under the law. I don't know that it doesn't work. I think that a lot of people feel, well, why aren't other classes protected as well, which could be an interesting discussion for each one. But when the law wants to fix a problem, it says, well, the problem is here. Let's fix it so it protected a class. Let's say age or sex or race or whatever it is that it's protected. So it's understandable why the law focused on that, because it's a very direct solution to a problem. Now you're saying, well, maybe after a certain period of time, that should be gone. It should be a different approach. That's reasonable. I haven't given it enough thought to come up with to have an intelligent discussion on it. It's just not something I thought about a lot. Just so you know, if I'm missing any of your comment, it's because I'm literally fighting deletion of comments off the live stream. I've been doing it I've had over 100 live stream, never had it before. I'm literally always at the very top with all my comments being deleted right now. So as I'm talking to you, more and more of the comments are getting deleted. So I'm trying to go through them as fast as possible. If I'm missing any of yours, it's because they're getting deleted. Vidar him. He was willing to make the cake. He refused to decorate it with the gay wedding themes. That's not what I read, but okay. Either way, the Supreme Court never made a decision on the merits of what people wanted it to decide. It just said that the Civil Rights Committee of the state did not treat them properly in the investigation, and did not really consider their religious beliefs or not. Not that somehow religious belief trumped discrimination charges, but rather that they weren't treated properly and then they sent it back. Oh, this is frustrating. Don't mind me. If I remember correctly, he could... Oh, yeah. Oh, if I remember it... As I'm looking at it, it just got deleted. Okay. Kel Panthera, IIRC. It wasn't even that the cake shop owner wouldn't make a cake at all, but he wouldn't put a specific message on the cake. Okay. ASDFGH, the FTC won't do anything about it. If they were instructed to investigate PayPal, they'd use the opportunity to reiterate PayPal's right to discriminate. I completely disagree. If you follow the FTC, they've had enormously difficult investigation. They've carried on for years. They just came out with a massive antitrust order against 1-800-CONTACT for its basically for forcing competitors to reach agreements by using its trademark. It runs tough investigations. It does not capitulate to these large companies. It doesn't have to be. It's a government agency here. These are not congressmen that need money for re-election. So I think the FTC is the right solution here. IENDI Knight, could you give us your personal opinion on this situation as a matter of principle? I would understand if you didn't want to. About this particular thing, I'm pro free speech. I have not expressed opinion about any of the individuals that have been banned, because I really don't follow those kind of topics. I'm not particularly interested in politics and social reform and social opinions. That's just not topics that interest me. I'm more, on my own, I like technology. It's really what interests me, in games and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff I follow. So I know Sargon of Akkad because I spoke about him in about a prior case. It's still ongoing against Akila Hughes, but otherwise I don't really have a lot of information on what he speaks about or anybody else. So my only opinion is that, and politically all I told you was that I don't belong to any political party. I'm considered unaffiliated in Florida. Means I don't vote in any of the primaries because I don't belong to any party. I believe that I believe in free speech, the right to contract. I believe that if these companies are excluding people based on beliefs, not based on specific actions, and it seems that more and more this seems to be a concerted effort. Take about actions, at least by individual companies, whether that's concerted or not, to be left up later on, that are targeting people of certain opinions because they find them unacceptable. And even though my guess, based on what I hear, that I would be in disagreement with virtually all of these individuals about the substance of their statement. Again, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me like I would be. I nonetheless believe that they have absolute right to express themselves, and if we are opposed to them, we should be pro their expression in the most visible way. We should not be trying to push them off of platforms. Loyal logic. You do understand many people that are CEOs have said publicly they talk to each other. Example C from they are colluding. I'm with you. They talk to each other. They come to this. I've seen that. That's not disturbing to me. I think that if you're a CEO of a major company, you feel alone unless you are able to talk to other people kind of like you. And the fact that you may talk about important issues, that doesn't disturb me. The question is whether or not they're coming to an agreement about how they should act together. That part is disturbing, especially when they have market power, when they're large enough to affect competition in the market, and that's what the law forbids. INDI night. Is this year way more important than any of us could imagine for the internet? We saw things move slowly before Patreon decided to act Sargon. What do you think will happen next? I'm surprised. I really did not foresee that. Definitely I didn't foresee the banning of Sargon, but I didn't foresee the reaction when people like Sam Harris stand up and say this is unacceptable. Now we're in a different ball game altogether. He is not... I don't consider him right at all. You know, he's an incredibly intelligent, well-respected individual. For him to take a stand in this matter is very instructive, and I think this has gone more mainstream than anybody expected, more than I expected. I think this is far beyond, people that support the individual being upset. This has gone beyond it, and I think that this is going to mushroom, mainly this behavior. If they are so brazen about shutting down Subscriber Star, I think this will happen again and again. I think more individuals will be banned. I think more companies will be shut as a result until there's enough pressure, and I think the pressure has to be put on the government to start an investigation. So I don't think we are at the point where it tapers off. I think that it's going to ramp up a little bit. Decepticon Prime, what do you think about a measure that may force a site to decide if it's a publisher or platform? I don't think that will do absolutely anything. I think it's a red herring because trying to take us back to what it was prior to 96 makes absolutely no sense, because none of those platforms will behave the way it was in 1996, because that reality no longer exists. Back then, there was no way to make money. There was no monetization platform. There was zero way of making money online except for paying for access. So the idea that they have to make a choice between it, somehow that's going to impact them, no. That only impacts what they allow on the site. They were never liable for not permitting things on the site. So this issue does not exist. Everybody thinks that somehow by removing this, they'll go back to 96. That's false. That can never happen, because the only thing that happened before was that they were liable for management of it. when you start managing your platform and you allow certain things on, you are liable for it. So that was what they were doing back in 1996 when they didn't understand this was a brand new technology. They were making no money off of anything, and they were only making a little bit of monthly charges off of access rights, which is not the right today. Today, the idea is everything is free, and liability exists based on what you put on. So the likely response to forcing them to decide publisher versus editor or platform is that they will not allow most of your content on. It will not be that it will allow everything on. They rather will allow less and less, so that it can still leave it open, still use the same current model, not go back to 1996 and create paywalls for everything. So it won't do anything. Lapco92, thank you so much for the super chat. I don't know why, but when I talk to a lawyer, money just flies out of my wallet. Thank you for these objective chats. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Wild Fox appears, but we already have those tools. People have the ability to block certain keywords they don't want to see, can block certain users they don't like. That's not true. If I want my stream to be the way I want it from only certain people and no recommendation, I cannot create that kind of a platform. The stream is driven by algorithms that are designed to keep me on their platforms. I don't have tools to prevent. I want to see only content from these people, or I want to start having content from the entire platform, but only within certain categories. And I want to be able to exclude certain discussions, certain categories, certain people, certain viewpoints. Give me that kind of detail controls over my stream that gives me the power to control. And then let everybody do whatever they want with it. I don't care, because I will exclude all of it because I'm not interested. You know, I get pushed stuff that platform thinks I want to see, because they misunderstand why I look. Sometimes I look at an individual and what he posted, and I like what he said. I like him individually, but I don't care about the topic. And they bombard me with more of the same topic from people that I never asked to be looked at. They misunderstand what I want to look, what I want to see, what interests me. Give me the power to control. At that point, I don't care if there's a lot of content that I disagree with, because I'll never see them. ENDI Knight. Sargon always talks about the need for an Internet Bill of Rights. How viable is this? How bad would it have to get? Well, it depends what we're talking about, the Internet Bill of Rights. There was a petition on the internet for Internet Bill of Rights, which was basically designed the idea there should be no discrimination. I think that has zero chance of succeeding. You need cooperation of both sides of the aisle. I think the way to go is what there is currently in Congress, defined as the Internet Bill of Rights, which is 10 different topics that need to be discussed, where the parties can come together, have an intelligent conversation, maybe reach an agreement on 2, 3, 4 of them. But if you start covering the entire topic of internet rights and problems that we have today, from privacy to net neutrality to discrimination online, and you start having conversation, I think that some of the problems can be solved. But when you take that issue in isolation, it right now speaks to only one side of the aisle, not both, and it's not going to have enough support to pass. You need to deal with it holistically, with the entire subject matter, all of the problems that are handled, and you got to have a conversation, you got to have negotiations and compromise. You've got to accept a compromise and not a 4-letter word. It's something that can actually start things going, start moving, and maybe we can solve some of those problems. Rami. Given that YouTube is surpassing big cabal companies in terms of video delivery, do you think they should also be held to the same standard like providing a public access channel? No, because I often think I don't necessarily support the same concept when it comes to TV and radio to begin with. I I like to allow private companies as much leeway as possible to do whatever they want to. At that point, the reason why they were, why they're, the logic behind TV and radio is that they build their service based on the public airways. As a result, that's part of what they get when they when they license a certain frequency. They have to give back a certain amount. That really doesn't exist when it comes to internet, especially when it's built in pipelines. It's not based on the public airways, so the logic doesn't really hold there. So I don't think that would work. Canadian Leaf. Google hides, deletes comments its bots finds offensive or disruptive. My comments are getting deleted based on the time. So it's more aggressive than ever when it comes to deleting older comments off of the stream. So much so that I lost a lot of comments. I'll probably not answer a bunch of your questions here. I've never seen it to be so aggressive. The 11382. Companies fearing a PR backlash. I think that's real. But there's been a PR backlash for a while, but it seems to be, I think the company thought it's isolated to specific people with specific interests. And I think suddenly we see a change here where people that are outside of the fan club of specific speakers are saying, there's something wrong here. We should not stand idly by and allow this blatant suppression of free speech. We should encourage people to speak and then speak against them when we're opposed, not force them off the platform, I think. And I think that's the big change here. When you see more and more people that are not in line with, the opinions of the people that are being banned start speaking out based on the principles of free speech, I think that's when things start changing. Nuve. I've heard conflicting stories about this. Has PayPal forbidden subscribers start from using their service, or like I've heard, they've actually only asked them not to apply at PayPal? Okay, so things have changed. My understanding originally that the only thing that they stopped PayPal it was only PayPal that said you cannot use PayPal to send the money collected to the content creators. But now I believe all functionality with respect to PayPal has been removed off of Subscriber Star, as well as Stripe. That was also removed. So now you're talking about that pretty much shut down the entire platform. They're not accepting it. There is no other way for them to process payments. They can accept payments and they cannot send it out. Sending out is probably easier because they can always cut checks and send it out. You can also wire directly to somebody's bank account, so that's not as big of a deal. But they have stopped taking any subscriber or follower donation, so they're pretty much shut down until they find competing processor. And I'm not sure if they do. That will be an interesting thing to look at. Interesting thing to look at whether or not they can fund, maybe even offshore, some sort of a credit card processor, or is Visa MasterCard going to put a stop to it and prevent anybody from signing them up? RE Style. Could you use a central website to organize everyone? What do you mean by that? Could you use... Yeah, I mean, that's what people did, right? With Facebook and Twitter, the Arab Spring, and a lot of the protests in New York. I forgot what it's called now. The Wall Street protest. Forgot the name. So yes. So maybe I'm missing the question. Ask me again. Yuri Knight. PayPal could never use Sargon as an excuse. Any closer look at Sargon would make them look really bad. This is why so many famous people are putting their hands on the fire for Sargon. Good point. Mike Mosk. Yeah, it's been doing that lately, deleting all comments after a while, which is BS. I just think it's more aggressive today. Yuri Knight. hey, you cannot use our service if Sargon, the radical centrist, is on your platform. It would never work. But that's what's happening. It's very strange. Because they allowed... I don't think it's even allowed. See, that's the whole thing. I'm not going to give them the credit to PayPal to say that it's because of Sargon that they're killing Subscriber Star. I think they're killing Subscriber Star because of Patreon. Because Subscriber Star was getting a lot of PR benefit off of what happened. I don't think they expected it. They just were the lucky recipient of all the attention off of the behavior of Patreon. And I think that's why they were acting. It wasn't about... At that point, it wasn't about Sargon even. It was about paying back... To me, it looks like it was paying back Patreon for what they were doing, which was in line with what PayPal wanted. But that's why I want an investigation to take place. I want to see if this is true. I think the whole thing just looks suspicious. Loyal Logic. We need to start talking about an internet Bill of Rights, so these open and free platforms use their TOS equally instead of against people they oppose. Also, it's the only way. I think, to the extent to which it's the greater Bill of Rights, I'm completely for it. The problem is you need to go to Congress. Go, try to get something done there. It's beyond me why we can never get them to sit down and talk. Realize that there has to be something that both parties can compromise and get a bill, not perfect for either side, but something that can work for everyone. If PayPal decided to name drop Sargon, would they be legally compelled to do the same for any platform or service Sargon was part of? No, they are not doing one. No, not really. There, if they decide to say we're not allowed Sargon, does not mean they have to do it everyone, but at some point they have to justify from a commercial purpose. We're doing this for commercial purpose or for as a free speech purpose. They have to come up with a reason of why they're doing it. Otherwise, it looks like they're going against their financial interests, which then puts at question why they would do it. Normally, the only ones who do stuff like that are monopolies or oligopolies who are acting in an anti-competitive manner that benefits the group but doesn't benefit the individual company. So it just makes the whole thing look very, very suspicious. D33 Purple. I don't like that the company as a person can control what I see. I know, but it is a private company. Right now, that's not illegal. I just think it's bad form. I think that it makes no sense. I think that the public would accept it if they gave us the tools to manage it, including giving parents the right to manage what their kids see. Not the way it's done right now, where they decide what's appropriate for what age group, but giving us the tool to say, I don't want myself to see this. I don't want my kids to see this. Be very, very granular. John Penn, the company is in California. California defines political group as a protected class only for employment discrimination purposes, so not for other things. So with respect to employment discrimination, yes, your employer cannot fire you because you are donating your time to some politician. But in other areas, it's not. When it comes to, it's not, political association is not, expression is not a protected right. Looks like I'm out. Okay. Not sure what happened here, but it looks like... Not exactly sure how any of this happened, but it looks like my my stream has died. Why exactly it died? Not clear. because everything is black on here, so I'm not seeing. Let me know if you guys see everything, if it's still working, or because I can see that everybody's still online, but for some reason I don't see. Oh, okay, I'm back. So okay, I'm not sure why it was. The stream is okay. Okay, my fault here. So let me see if I can find where I am. Okay. Yuri Knight. I agree with Sargon when he posted, can we all take a moment to recognize that Sam Harris org is possibly the most demonstrably principled public person in public life. I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. Don't always agree with what he says, but a big fan of his of him personally, and I think that to me that made a big difference. I think it's moving mainstream once it went beyond people that actually supporting political point of view to people supporting a principle. So I agree. Anthony Pacheco. You might be interested in Razor Fist video on the Patreon, Boo-ha-ha, and free speech. If you haven't seen it already, it's sobering and a good analysis of current free speech issues. Razor Fist, I don't know if I saw it or not. Do me a favor, send me a link on Twitter. I'll take a look. Yuri Not Sargon still has his Patreon account. What does this tell us? I'm not sure. I didn't know that he has his Patreon account. KZ, is there any way to require financial institutions like PayPal, credit card companies to be impartial with transaction while securing their First Amendment rights? The problem is it's that, again, you're talking about political association and political expressions are not protected class. So we have a law that forbids companies providing credit, so banks, insurance companies, such, from discriminating, but protected expression, political expression is not a protected class. So you'd have to ask Congress to add that in. Go ahead and ask Congress to do anything. I hate repeating myself, but it's just the most ineffectual thing to do right now is expect our representatives and our senators to get anything done here, because they have to work together. And we have been in what seems to be like 20 years of just what would the word be? Just hostile environment in Washington where nothing gets done. So some partisan things get done, but nothing that requires action by both sides of the aisle. Anon Mason, if everyone saw only what they want to see, does that not create a bubble? And given time that festers into everyone having different facts? How is that different now? Without access to the internet, I see what I want to see. I speak to the people I want to speak to, and I don't speak to people I don't want to speak to. I read the newspapers I'm interested in, and not waste my money on anything else. Why should I be bombarded with what platforms tell me I need to see? Because that makes them more money. So a move to giving me the power to control everything just puts me back to the way real life actually happens, where I am in control of what I listen to, what I see, rather than algorithm and mathematical formulas that try to determine what I may want to look at and then throw more and more things at me that somehow resemble that. Last night online, do you think that PayPal has most of the market share to be hit by the FTC, and do you believe that a law can be made that would stop area market monopoly like the net or Comcast? PayPal, I think, has more than enough market share. The issue is whether or not they have market power. They have more than enough market share. I don't understand enough about the power they have in the marketplace. It seems to me that it's quite substantial because it's beyond being big. They are a symbol of trust to the consumer. As a result, not using it is a real financial hurdle to a lot of small businesses. So they control the market by their size, something that nobody else can do. So I do believe that the FTC is ripe to look at them. last site online having the only fast internet in the state. Oh, that's a different issue altogether here. I'm not sure it's room for the federal government. I think this needs to be handled locally. I think that there are reasons why we have local monopolies, and I think that these companies often pay municipalities and counties and cities to have exclusive access to the space under the roads by providing the cities with free access and free services in exchange for that, and that allows them to maintain their local monopolies. I think that we need more action on the local and state level in order to impact that. I don't know if the federal level is the right way to go about it. Ari Styles, I want to report, centralize, and publish this. This is issue on my news blog and website. We need an attorney. Are you in? I don't know what we're talking about, but you're talking about publishing this video. You're welcome to do it. That's not a problem at all. If you were talking about anything else, shoot me something on Twitter. I'll talk about anything. No problem. Jay, what do you think about the fact that the woman in charge of Patreon Council we used to work for PayPal? I just learned it from all you guys, so I don't know what to think about that. It's just more information on top of what's been happening over the past week. It's interesting. Again, none of that is evidence of wrongdoing, but I think we have enough evidence here to suggest that an investigation is appropriate here. Kyle, why is music not covered by fair use? Do you think it should be? It absolutely should be. It is covered by fair use, but the music industry is so aggressive that platforms have capitulated, built specific rules for them because they make so much money off of music. They want the music industry's participation, and they've been so aggressive with their lawsuit that people just don't have the wherewithal to defend themselves. So music is not less impacted by fair use. They are just so much more aggressive than anybody else that they basically then receive their own rules through the platforms. James Coleman, thank you for the super chat. Do you think the First Amendment should be updated? Companies have more power than the government when it was written. No, I don't think there's. Not only I don't think it should be written. I don't think there's any possibility of us passing. We can't pass a small basic law. We cannot pass any sort of constitutional amendment. So that's an impossibility here. Should companies have the same rights as individuals? That's kind of an esoteric question because the courts pretty much decided they do. Take away their right to vote. They can obviously vote, but they pretty much have all First Amendment rights that individuals have. It is just something we have to live with. The chance of the court reversing a long history of guaranteeing court rights. They might be able at the edges to remove some things, but a complete fallback and saying that corporations are not individuals and we're going to look at the rights of the underlying people, but not the corporation as an entity. I just don't think it's realistic right now. So I guess I have not thought about it because I tend to take certain things as facts, and that's just a legal fact right now. So I haven't really sat around contemplating, could it be done better? Okay, I'm just looking for where I stopped. I lost sight here. Lapco92, initial PR backlashes have been small financial ones. The companies have weathered this okay. By driving people away, they've impacted income of unrelated creators. It's ideological now. Right, so that was my original comment. When people ask me what do I think would happen, I say it's going to be a small impact. They wouldn't care. This is what they want. They expected it. But I do think it has changed. That when they not only gone after Sargon, not only did that argument become more mainstream, now that shed light on their actions against Subscriber Star, which puts the whole thing in a spotlight which none of them want to. And I think there's a chance that this can go mainstream, while previous time it was just, we have a small financial impact, we can all weather it, we're fine, we're still the dominant players here, it's not going to do much. There's a chance that this can go mainstream to a great extent where it could not have gone before. So we'll see. Last night online, but the people that whine to companies are the people that hate free speech, and the people that support free speech do not go to companies to support it. Look at Tucker Carlson. I agree with you. I know it's people are pushing for deplatforming. They believe that free speech is only for people with certain rights, certain kind of speech. That's why the issue should go mainstream. That is so antithetical to what America is about that it's hard to have a long discussion over that. I don't know if anybody in principle, theoretically, can argue that somehow free speech is wrong. But when they look at, do you believe that this person, somebody you completely disagree with, he should have free reign to say whatever he wants to? A lot of people say, of course not. I oppose his speech. I'd rather not see him on YouTube or Facebook at all. Not realizing that you're just, you on the one hand you support free speech, but now you're also proposing the banning of a person because of the content of their speech. I think that what needs to happen is for this to become more mainstream. There's a real chance that this becomes a mainstream argument, at which point it will have some legs. Until now, it'd been kind of a small issue. Ronnie Schreiber, haven't courts ruled that terms of service agreements are contractual? Would Sargon have grounds to sue? They are contractual, but those contracts have provision that said they can terminate you for any and all reason. So they can ban you for any and all reason, including Sargon. Edward McDonald, what are the chances of those such as Jordan Peterson et al. Creating their own payment system successfully? Could Visa, MasterCard refuse their service to them? That's an interesting idea. And the argument is that Visa, MasterCard can refuse anybody. The problem is that they are easily a monopoly, the two of them. You have obviously American Express, you have Discover, there are small players, but they're the dominant player in the market. And their action would highlight, if somebody wanted to start a new credit card processor and they refused them based on ideological reasons or some related reason that we don't know, but that'll be an interesting thing to look at. I hope that would happen, but I'm not sure, because the question always is whether or not these are rules set by PayPal or these rules set by Visa, MasterCard and pushed down to the credit card processors. So would Visa, MasterCard refuse to deal with a new credit card processor that doesn't establish those rules? It's a good question. Last night online, how can we help to stop this and push this to stop this from happening? In my opinion, we have to push through our local representatives, through the Better Business Bureaus, through your state attorney general, for an FTC investigation. That's something that can happen tomorrow. These are political organizations. These are executive level agencies. They can start an investigation tomorrow based on what's happening. And I think that's the quickest and most effective thing that can happen here. Look, if the media picks it up and views it in the right light, that could have enormous impact. I don't know if I have that much faith that this will actually happen, but an FTC investigation, I've seen those. I mean, read some of those FTC antitrust investigation. They're powerful. They impact. They make changes immediately. John Penn, do you think the guy suing over the Carlton has a hope in hell of winning? I don't know what the Carlton is. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what we're talking about. Send me a link or something on Twitter. I'll take a look. Kyle, how can Visa MasterCard prevent you from spending your own money if it's a debit card? They don't have to. They can pass rules and pressure the issuing bank to prevent you from gaining access to it. So you're right. A debit card is different because that's the bank itself, but the banks are the members. So the banks, I guess the issue is the banks can refuse to deal with you, at which point you won't have a debit card. But the problem is you might have a debit card, but you need to be able to process it. And if you can't process the charge through a certain website that you like, then you're right. They won't stop they won't take the ability out of your card. But if you can only use it in Amazon, but you cannot use it in Best Buy because Visa and MasterCard are opposed to Best Buy and what they stand for, that's the problem here. So I don't see the member bank going after their patron. Don't forget, these banks have allowed drug dealers, they've allowed the worst people in the world to open up account and deal with them. They're only stopped by laws that prevent them from working with certain people of that are criminals or might be laundering money. That's the law preventing them. The banks themselves are making fees. They're happy with it. So why are they through this association stopping the processing of payments here? That's completely antithetical to their core. The banks are all about making money. They don't care about your belief. They just want to collect fees. They want them. That's how they make their money. So when they do something that is simply antithetical to their common behavior, you have to suspect that something else is going on here. And that's the problem here, really. That there's enough behavior here that says, okay, that's kind of strange. That's all I'm saying here. Arcane Knight, you're coming in fine. Everything. Oh, okay. Thank you guys for letting me know everything was working well. James Coleman, it is here. Did you get my super chat earlier? James Coleman, I don't remember. I think I got you right. I read it last night online. It is okay. Let me rephrase. How can we as content creators and business stop or pressure this to stop? I'm not sure. The problem is here, and I think a bunch of different people said it correctly, is that when content creators have limited options, they need to put their content out. So somebody says, let's boycott this platform or that. It's impractical because at the end of the day, in order to have the greatest impact, you need to use those platforms, even if those platforms are antithetical to your beliefs. I think the key is to speak in support. And right now, you don't get any of the real large YouTubers speaking about this subject at all because it's not in their interest. They're not going to speak against the platforms. They're not going to speak against the payment processors. They're not going to speak against Patreon because it's just not in their wheelhouse. So we spoke about many times before. If you want to impact anything, you've got to go to your top 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 YouTubers, Instagrammers, people on Facebook, on Twitter, and have them work with the platform to change things. But none of them are. There's no concerted effort. There are no content creators. I know people say there's communities. There's no community. There's a bunch of people that have their own independent actions, and sometimes they get together into conventions and talk to one another. But what content creators should do, they should speak about this. They should understand that beyond what's in front of them, beyond the video that's come up, the channel that they're building, there is a greater world and they benefit from it. And when they speak about technology, they're benefiting by being able to express themselves in the way they want to express themselves. But they should also see the benefit of standing with people that want to speak about politics or social issues or other things that are a little more edgy, a little more controversial, and just speak in support of it. So what can content creators do? Encourage larger content creators to speak about this subject, something you just don't see so far. Hanama. Ooh, I have no idea what it says. Everyone sees you. You're apparently cut off from your own stream. Thank you. Yeah, it seems I was blacked out for a while. Brian Gibson, everything looks good. Cons Clancy, I see you. Thank you. James Coleman, did you get my super chat earlier? It's a good question. I thought I got it. There's no way for me to look right now because everything disappeared. Red Risotto. Most bad business decision happens when reacting to a situation. I completely agree with you that Sargon subscriber star were unrelated by the overlap. Patreon will lose a lot. I think that's the fear for Patreon right now. But if they killed subscriber star, then Patreon is okay. If there is no alternative, I think that Patreon is saved. I think they understand that. And that was their greatest risk. Subscriber Star, more than Sargon. Because Subscriber Star was a viable competitor who benefited from the fallout from Sargon. So, and if we saw it with other platforms too, like Gab and stuff, if there is no alternative to Patreon, then whatever Patreon says goes. Done. If in fact payment processors are helping Patreon maintain its position, but making sure that there are no payment platforms that allow transaction that PayPal otherwise does, that Patreon otherwise would forbid, then there is no other solution for anybody else. That's what has to change it. That's why I think that there has to be an investigation. Because this is the clearest form of anti-competitive behavior that we've seen to date by multiple organizations seemingly working together. I think that this needs to go beyond speech. An investigation is merited here. Just getting by. What do you think of Jordan Peterson attempt to make a payment platform on his own? I think that he's. I can't wait to see how that turns out. Whether or not he gets. I mean, he's not running his own in the sense that he's not going to be the new American Express. He's going to petition Visa to be a credit card processor. Let's see if he gets accepted. Friend Moore, I have to go back and watch the beginning, but I wanted to ask you if someone can use tortious interference as a basis to sue a harassing third party trying to deplatform them. The answer is yes. You have to prove it. The answer is absolutely. It depends on what state you're in, because each state has a different standard. In some places, like Texas, if you had a relationship and it was broken because somebody said something, that could be the basis. In New York, it's not, because there would have to have been a breach in the agreement for that to be tortious interference. So it kind of depends on the state, on how it's going to be applied. Ronald Crossman, Congress is nothing but gridlock. Yep, I agree with you. Lapco 92, getting by, he might miss this. There's a space. Oh, yes, guys. Sometimes you write it correctly, but if there's a space or there's no space, it doesn't show up. I can't help that. Last night online. So, is the only way to help Sargon and the others to go to Washington, or is there more we can do? What should I do? Would PayPal be under the communication law because they wire money? Look, in many ways, we're limited because the biggest way to do is talk. That's always been the case. The most help the best thing that can happen from a pure conversation about the topic is for this to go mainstream, meaning to be picked up by media companies to see what's going on here. In my opinion, this particular situation, the triangle, needs to be investigated. It might be that this can be investigated by the Wall Street Journal or one of the other newspapers that can take a look into it. What exactly happened here? It's too suspicious. So what you can do, you can highlight the story here and ask for investigation. Journalists to take this on and potentially investigate it. The FTC, I think, is the right party here. It's not that we're going to Washington, but we're working toward the issue of Washington starting an investigation. I'm not proposing the legislative route, even though last time I proposed 4 or 5 different legislative proposals that can solve this issue. And it's largely because Washington is ineffective. And that means that our congressmen are ineffective. But as a bureaucracy, things work in Washington. Things get done as pure bureaucracies. So If you can get it in front of the FTC, I think that can actually work. So I think our job is to highlight it, to talk about it, to raise the prospect of it, to support larger creators who speak about it. Yes, some large creators have spoken about it, but not really a lot of mainstream, when you get some of the real large ones outside of social politics and philosophy talking about it, people that otherwise are in technology, into sports, into gaming, actually voicing their opinion about something like that, then it has an impact. James Coleman, do you think the First Amendment needs to be updated to include companies as they have the power? I think I spoke about that before. Unknown Mason. So the bubble you chose is the lesser evil. I guess that makes sense. I would like to see something better, though. The bubble you chose. I'm not sure what we're saying. I apologize. Just getting by. What do you think of Georgian attempts to create an alternative platform? Waiting for it to happen. What's going on here? I'm reading a lot of the same stuff. Oh. Let's see. Hana Malak. Agreed on the ineffectiveness of Congress. Do people think the filibuster has outlived its usefulness? Does it need to be curtailed to encourage compromise between the parties? I 100% believe so. I think that, and this is from both parties. I'm somebody who believes that both parties are corrupt. They're all about supporting the party itself. They care little about what the people themselves want or don't want. I think that, and it started long before this administration. This started, things weren't very ugly during the Clinton administration, and it got even worse during the Bush administration, and it never got better. I think that the concept developed that should be absolutely no compromise. It's a 4-letter word. We should do everything to stop the other ones, because then we can campaign on the fact that they were ineffectual and we were able to stop them from doing something bad. And this has been the tactic for like 20 years now, which means we have no new laws. We have no laws that are current that can actually deal with some of the problems we're facing now. So, yes, I think that if there were ways to prevent the filibuster, a way to prevent people from stopping actions in Congress, a way for it to come back to, let's sit down, let's have conversation, let's resolve it, and even if we don't agree on everything, we'll get something that will work better for the people than nothing at all. Roni Schreiber. What about using stockholder activism to get Visa and MasterCard to adhere to free speech principle? I think it can be outstanding if you can get some of the big guys. Don't forget, at the end of the day, so much of when we talk about shareholder activism, we're talking about large chunks of shares being owned by or controlled by an individual or a small group of people that then advocate for specific behavior. So very effective. But you've got to go through those large individuals. You and me owning some shares in Apple and talking to Apple won't make any impact. But, if you can get a hold of the California Teachers Retirement Fund to advocate for specific behavior, guess what? They're going to have an impact. Oh, James Coleman, I think I answered that. I see that. I guess I spoke already about it. Is that you? No, that's somebody else. But I just see your super chat now, and I think I spoke about it before. Last night online, thank you for the super chat. Says thank you for the answer. Forget the rest. Thank you. I'm going to have to end it because my throat is dying on me here. I apologize for not being able to read everything. Second Fleet Actual. They allow Antifa, that is material support of terrorism. That is all the leverage the government would need to stop this. Well, they can't, because that's still free speech. Technically, the government cannot stop terrorists from posting videos on YouTube evenly. That's why there was for a long time recruitment videos on YouTube. So you think the government can stop, but just the opposite. The government is powerless to stop this kind of stuff. So the fact that there are bad things on those platforms is probably not going to be sufficient for the government to change. They have to find a basis in law, and it's not going to be that because of the First Amendment protection. I'm going to, and I do apologize, I thought I'd be able to get through everything, but I wasn't able to. Just my slow reading and the fact that I talk way too much when I'm responding to every answer. I apologize. Maybe we can carry this again next time. By the way, and I do apologize, I forgot to mention, there's not going to be a live stream next Tuesday because of the entire Christmas holiday. So the next one will be in 2 weeks. I hope everybody has a great weekend, great holidays. I'll make sure to drop another video this week as well, beyond the one that's gonna go tomorrow. I'm sorry, but my throat is just gone. It's itchy and scratchy, and it's hard for me to think. And I've been speaking up for almost 2.5 hours. So thank you everybody for showing up. I really appreciate it. Let's continue the conversation. Maybe we need to talk about it again in 2 weeks to see where things stand. Maybe we can flush out some of the proposal. I'll try to flush out some of my ideas, what I was talking to. Maybe you guys can come up with some suggestion. We'll see where things develop. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything you want to discuss, just leave them down below. I'd love to talk to you. I'll see you next time.